So this room brings together individuals with a legacy rooted in a passion for nature and technology. At the heart of my work, it matters to remember our own historic and personal connections to nature. I also come from a call and response tradition. So at this point, I would like to invite you to call out the names of your first environmental and nature teacher. Just shout them out. It could be an author. Don't be shy. Nice. Thank you. Thank you. I now want to welcome technology into the room. You are free to leave your smartphones on. I want you to tweet, text, and post any part of this conversation as we're having it. So no eye contact necessary. That's refreshing, isn't it? I know I would not be here or have the passion for nature and technology had it not been for my first nature teachers, my parents, who are no longer with us, AC and Ella Mae Levias. I have to admit, I did not know the legacy of John Muir or Rachel Carson, but I had Harriet Tubman, who knew how to guide hundreds of slaves safely to freedom based on a close and intuitive relationship to nature. I had George Washington Carver, an artist, environmentalist, and teacher. He taught his students how to make compost out of leaves and trash and garbage long before the 20th century organic gardening movement took foot. And in the year of my birth, Marvin Gaye, whose melodic voice plaintively asked, "What's going on? What's going on with our ecology?" And I had my grannies and papas, aunts, uncles, cousins, who all contributed to my knowledge of the ways of nature. So my parents had this working farm. I grew up in Oakland, and we had a farm about 100 miles north, and we went there every other weekend. And we had cows, and we had pigs, and we had a walnut orchard that was about 6 acres. And we had no TV. So I had lots of unstructured time in nature. I rode my bike along country roads. I was able to observe the life cycle of a tadpole into a frog. It was my laboratory. My dad was an avid hunter and a fisher, and he put my first fishing pole in my hand when I was 3. Back home in the city, I was a Girl Scout, and I participated in as many rec and park programs as I could. And I was also an early adopter of technology that started with a 6th grade graduation present from my parents of a Commodore computer. Therefore, my social media road began at 5 kilobytes and 1 megahertz. So a childhood filled with outdoor experiences reached a high point in the backcountry of the Sierra Nevadas. I was on a mountaineering trip. We were expected to do a climb, and I had never rock climbed before. I found myself on the side of a mountain. I didn't have a headlight, and it was dusk, and I was slow. And as I got up midway, I couldn't see anymore. I didn't think I could carry on. I didn't know what was below me or what was above me. And at the point of my breakdown, because I did have a breakdown, my instructor, he leaned over and he said, "Rue, trust your feet." Something clicked, and I made it to the top. And I made it without seeing the path ahead. And at 20 years old, at the brink of adulthood, that was the lesson I needed to learn, that I could trust what was within me to lead me in life. And it was at that moment that I discovered nature as a compelling teacher. Around that time, it was around the early 90s, I was also connecting to the World Wide Web at about 14.4 baud. I was a part of the Usenet groups. I was working the mailing lists, trying to find people like me who wanted to engage with nature. But when social media came on the scene, it leveled the playing field of connection. It allowed me to share and exchange information unlike ever before and with exactly who I wanted. In 2009, I had a conversation with a friend, and she asked a question because she knew I was not quite sure what my next steps were going to be. And she asked me the question that I think we all need to ask ourselves at some point or another, and that was, what would you do with yourself if you had all the time and all the money in the world? And I just rattled off, oh, I'd probably start a website to connect African Americans to the outdoors. And she looked at me like, whoa, where'd that come from? And it was in that moment that I realized she wouldn't know because I never really let that out. So urgently, within a week, Outdoor Afro was born. And I started it with just a blogger blog. And at first, Outdoor Afro was really about my own personal sharing, how I, as a mother, was getting out in the outdoors, about my history. But the site quickly became a place where people from all over the country stood up to be counted and said, me too. And then when I realized when you put all of those who thought they were the only ones together, were actually quite numerous. So today, Outdoor Afro is not only about shifting the popular representation of who gets outdoors, but it's also about building community. And it's a community that people have come to trust through dialogue and relevant content, much like the Washington Trails Association has created. And I'm delighted that people are using the site to get outdoors, right in their own backyard, so that they no longer have to be the only one. As the conversation and engagement with an Outdoor Afro has deepened, I have also come to appreciate the similarities between nature and social media, how the success of each one depends on diverse, organic, and sustainable connections. In the same way that I understand how birds and other wildlife thrive in diverse, healthy habitat, so too does online social change need to be connected to many platforms, audiences, and allies to grow and be resilient to the whims of trend. I was never interested in begging for or buying an audience for Outdoor Afro. In the same way I shy away from using Miracle-Gro to create monster tomatoes in my garden. But in the end, Outdoor Afro is not about me or how many likes it earns on Facebook, but it's about a long view that aims to shift the culture toward a passionate and relevant connection to nature for everyone. Right now in our country, we are in the grips of an important movement and an opportunity for transformation, the Occupy movement. And it's very wedded to social media. The Twitter hashtag, Occupy, has captured the imagination of everyone. I even heard my own children saying they were going to go Occupy Halloween instead of trick or treat. Hello? But of course, being me, I reflect on nature, the outdoors. And notice the irony of how Occupy protesters in my hometown of Oakland and in every urban hub are also making themselves visible outdoors by camping. And they're doing so in public plazas all over the country. A great American camp out indeed. But as I sat home about a week and a half ago with my kids, following the events, frightening events happening in Oakland on Twitter, not TV, Twitter, I also contemplated what alternatives we might have to occupy peace in our lives? How can we balance the economic and social pain that has really touched us all? With African American participation recorded as low as 1% in the national park system, I thought of the 99% of people who look like me, those who do not benefit from this public and important resource that holds the possibility of personal enrichment and sustainability in ways you can't even put a dollar sign on. Therefore, it's my goal to do my part to help generate a future where people of all ages and of every hue know that not only public plazas, but also parks and wild spaces are their inheritance and theirs to benefit from and support. So, standing on the shoulders of our environmental teachers whose names still fill this room under the sound of my voice, leveraging our access to technology and remembering our rich experiences in the outdoors, I invite you now to help more people occupy nature. Imagine the part you will play to make this happen. Won't you join me? Thank you.